Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 16. The Lions opener where they took on the fairly unknown New Zealand Provincial Barbarians and only won 13-7. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Right, welcome everyone. This is the first proper Lions episode, the first of the Lions games, the big opener. It's against the New Zealand Provincial Barbarians. Who the hell are they? I'm joined as always by Mr. Dan Wood. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How you doing? I was just about to say it feels like I haven't seen you forever, but I was at yours on Saturday for a barbecue, so not that long ago, really. It's been a hectic month, and I'm back home now. I'm feeling well rested, sun kissed, and really pretty excited about the Lions and England tour to Argentina.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we'll get on to that because obviously there's a big game coming up, but yeah, today, like you say, it's Lions. It's all kicking off. There's been lots of hype for a while now. We've been, we've covered obviously the Lions squad selection, and we've talked about who we think might be test starters and which of the England boys have got a shot and what we expect to see. But now it's kind of crunch time, isn't it? It's time for them to put their money where their mouths are, so to speak, because of course it's these early games that are going to dictate what Warren Gatland decides to do for the test matches. So it's all going to happen. It's all going to come around very quickly, I think. Now that things have got started, it seems like it's been a while coming, but we're there now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think this tour, yes, everyone's got in their head who the starting 15 is, and they don't always match up. But I actually think this tour places genuinely are for the taking. So these matches are important for the Lions, like you say, whereas there was an article about when Graham Henry did it in 2001. On day one, he'd lost half the squad because he basically made clear which ones were the midweek and which ones were the test squad. Whereas Gatland doesn't do that. Places are up for the taking. A few people, as we'll go into detail, a few people stood up. A few probably didn't. So it's going to be a...
like you say, we're about to talk through the game and our take on it all. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there were guys that in my head were nailed on for test positions who I think didn't perform at all and have potentially, it's early days. Game one, 3 days off the plane, jet lag and what have you is still floating around. So maybe not take too much from it, but it's there are guys I think who have definitely put question marks over their heads in both ways. In both senses. There are guys who I thought were nailed on and who perhaps aren't anymore, and there are guys who perhaps we thought didn't have a shot and have already kind of stepped up and said, "Hold on, don't write me off." So it's going to be really interesting. Let's just crack on. Let's start talking about the game. And
sure.
We're going to get onto this, aren't we? We're going to cover all of these areas as we discuss through it. So, yeah, as I say, it's the opening game of the 2017 Lions tour to New Zealand of all places. The New Zealand Provincial Barbarians, the opposition. They don't think they've ever played them before. I've never heard of them before. In fact, the only thing that I knew about them going into the game was that Warren Gatland's son Bryn was their fly half.
Didn't have a bad game either. Are they an actual team, or are they kind of a made-up team purely for the Lions side?
Well, no. So I think I read, or I think in the build-up to the game, I think they were saying that they've been around for years, but a bit like our Barbarians, they don't play very often. So this team had only had a week together. So they'd actually had less time together than the Lions.
Oh Jesus!
Just to kind of add more insult to injury in terms of the result. Maybe we should just start this at the end and say the Lions won, but it was 13-7 in a game that they should have. Certainly, the expectation was that they were going to put a cricket score on them.
It was underwhelming. It was massively underwhelming. There's all this chat about jet lag and whatever. Ultimately, they won. Great. Let's move on, and I'm sure they will. But it wasn't. It shouldn't have been 13-7, and they know that. As much as for the cameras, they're saying, "Oh, it's about getting the win and all that." If they truly believe that, we're screwed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think though, let's just a couple of little caveats. So, firstly, I agreed. You can't blame the jet lag, but we've recently been to the other side of the world, and it does hit you. So there's going to be not that it's 80 minutes worth of an excuse, but maybe it excuses the first 5 or 10 minutes to a degree. You've also got the fact that they haven't played together before. They've been in training, but that it's disruptive. And obviously they've just come off the back of a pretty hardcore season. So all of these things, they're not excuses, because that's what the Lions tour is. That's when they go on tour, and it's been happening every 4 years for God knows how long. But maybe you give them. I mean, I was sat there watching it with my wife, and she was saying, "Is this what you were expecting?" And I was like, "No, but don't worry. There'll be 10 minutes of this. It's just ironing out the creases, and then they'll put a cricket score on." And it never happened. I mean, we'll go into the game at the beginning where it began. The kickoff, confident right up to about, I think, the 6th second of the game, when Bryn Gatland's kickoff sailed over the top of, I don't know who the receiver was, but someone was lifted for the ball. I just completely misjudged where the ball was going to land. Went over his head, hit the ground, popped up, and the Barbarians winger came through, took it, and almost scored off in the first sort of 2 minutes. It was unbelievable. So you kind of immediately went, oh, they're obviously, they need to switch on. They're tired. So I wasn't worried at that point. But as we saw, as the game went on, you did start to kind of go, hold on a second. We've been waiting to kind of switch on and sort it out for a while now, and it's not happening.
Yeah, it's I mean, this was the one, because they've got some tough matches coming up. This was the one where you thought they'd ease into it, they'd win. I was actually laying on the bloody airport floor trying to stream it via my phone. So I see the kickoff, I see them jump up, and then buffering or whatever. And then the next thing I see, the Provincial Barbarians wings on the ball, and I'm like, what the hell's just happened here? So yeah, it wasn't a great start. One of the things that I think, and this is looking at the game as a whole, I wonder, are some of them, because like we were saying, people genuinely have the opportunity to make a test team, are people playing as individuals too much?
I mean, I think that is always going to be, and that's another thing, actually, you're right, that it's unfortunate, because you want to think of them as a squad of 40, 41, whatever they are, and they're all there to support each other. And I have no doubt that come test match time, that's what they will be. Yeah. But it is game one. It's the game that they were expected to win comfortably. And I suspect absolutely anyone who's out there who thinks my position in the test team, and this is most of them, is not cemented, is going to want to be doing individual things that make Warren Gatland go, yeah, you're my guy. Johnny Sexton's a great example, because he's under a lot of pressure, because even though Farrell is England's inside centre, and we're all very happy with that, Warren Gatland has had no qualms about saying that he sees him as a world-class fly half. So that immediately puts Sexton under huge pressure, because this guy who isn't even a fly half for his country is being touted as being world-class. So he knew he had a lot to do. They were saying in the build-up to the game, and as the game started, he was running around all day saying, who's doing the kicking? I want to be doing the kicking. He wanted the opportunity to show that he could, all aspects of playing as a 10 were in his control. And I don't know what went wrong for him. It didn't happen.
You're right. It didn't happen. I mean, we didn't have a bad game. And let's not mess about. Sexton is a world-class fly half. Yes. No doubt about that. But I cannot see a scenario where you don't play Farrell. And if Farrell's not playing at 12, he has to start at 10. I know I'm massively biased. I do know that. But I'm trying to do this without bias attached. You can't not play Farrell.
Well, I agree with you. And actually, I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. We had that whole thing on Twitter, the Ask Warren campaign that they ran, where one of the questions that I posed as the England Rugby pod to him was, who do you predict as the Lions player of the tour? And his response was Owen Farrell, and the fact that he saw him as a 10. Now, you don't give the Lions player of the tour to a midweek player. And if he thinks that Owen Farrell is a 10 and he expects him to be the player of the tour, then he also must expect him to be the Lions Test 10.
I just think, I agree with that, and I think you're right. I just think Farrell is one of the best players in the world at the moment. The way he's playing overall, and I think that game, and I think there was an article by Jeremy Guscott saying this, that it's advantage Farrell at the moment.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it's doing that. I mean, Farrell will have a start, obviously not the next one, but he'll start at 10. I'm almost 100% confident he will after the next match. So obviously there's the Blues coming up next.
Chiefs, I think.
I think it's Crusaders, isn't it?
Crusaders?
On the 10th? Yeah, Crusaders on the 10th. I'm like I say, almost 100% sure Farrell will be starting at 10 there. If he then has a solid game, he's going to be very hard to move from that spot. You can't not play Farrell. I mean, he's too good.
He's too good. You're absolutely right. I think the other thing people need to bear in mind is, particularly if you look at it as a 15 rather than a 23, there are 41 guys out there, 42 guys out there, whatever it is. So, you've got the best part of 3 different 15s at your disposal.
Yeah.
And, as we know, that can make a huge difference to how they perform as a team. They really aren't a team of 40. So people sort of say, oh, they were awful. They were awful on Saturday. So, what chance have they got against anyone else? But as we know, there are 15 changes for tomorrow's game. That's an entire side. So we could well see something very, very different, in addition to the fact that there are guys who will be stepping up in order to make up for what happened on Saturday. Just to give everyone, just so that everyone knows, anyone who doesn't already know, so the starting team for this game was Joe Marler, Rory Best and Kyle Sinclair up front. So a couple of England boys in there, which is great to see.
Yeah.
Alan Wynne and Ian Henderson making up the row, with Ross Moriarty, Sam Warburton, the captain, of course, and Toby Faletau at 8. There was then Greg Laidlaw at 9, Johnny Sexton, as we've mentioned, as the fly half. In the centres, there was another England pairing in Ben Teo and Jonathan Joseph. Another good thing to see. Watson and Seymour on the wings, and Stuart Hogg at the back. And then the replacements, Jamie George, England, obviously. Mako, Tad Furlong, George Cruz, which is good to see him. Justin Tipperick, Reece Webb, Owen Farrell, of course, and Jared Payne was the last one of those. So it was a decent side on paper, but that's Lions, isn't it? These guys, it's a very mixed team.
Quality players. Quality players.
But it's a good mix of Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and England in there. So.
Yeah, you've got all 3 Scots boys starting. I don't think any of them probably stood up. I mean, Stuart Hogg didn't have his. He seemed to try and rush it. He seemed to try and make things happen when it wasn't there. I still have him as a test starter.
I think it will be very interesting to see what happens in the next game. I think Stuart Hogg, in my opinion, had an absolute shocker.
All right.
Beforehand, I would agree with you. He was nailed on for fullback for me. Even though he's defensively, there are question marks over him. I just felt that in attack he was so dominant that I thought he was nailed on to be the Test starting 15. I just think he was so poor, given what expectations were, that he's thrown the fullback door wide open, because. We know that. I mean, Anthony Watson had a great game at 14, but there are other wingers who may well do the same. And in fact, 2 more England boys playing tomorrow in Jack Nowell and Elliot Daly. So if either of them, or if both of them, were to have a great game, on top of the fact there are obviously plenty of other wingers who may well do really well in their kind of opening gambits, Stuart Hogg could be under real pressure from not just the other fullbacks, but people like Anthony Watson.
Liam Williams, I think, is the danger man from Stuart Hogg's perspective.
Well, Liam Williams is on the bench tomorrow.
He's on the bench, isn't he? And Halfpenny starts.
Yeah, and obviously Halfpenny is one of the ones that we have said we didn't think he should be on the tour. We stick by that based on past, his recent performances. But who knows? The guy was the player of the tournament in 2013, and you can't judge someone on what they were like 4 years ago. But there are people who step up for Lions. It's something they turn something on for a Lions tour, and so for all we know, he'll find that missing form tomorrow, and he puts Hogg under huge pressure if he does do that. So He's got a massive
and
opportunity.
he's capable of doing that. He
Absolutely.
is capable of doing that.
And he needs to answer his critics, because he has come in for quite a lot of grief over his selection. So he needs to go, hold on, I want to show you why I've been selected. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him have a stormer of a game tomorrow, which is not great for Hogg. I mean, we'll leave Hogg alone for a bit, because I'm sure he'll get an opportunity to make up for this, and hopefully he'll do that. But I think if we go through the team, I mean, we are biased. We're the England Rugby Pod, of course we're biased. But I genuinely believe that all of the England boys did all right. If not well.
The only one for me who probably didn't do himself justice was JJ. I don't think he did anything wrong.
Yeah, he was quiet.
He was quiet. I think he could have gotten more. Whereas Tio, I thought had a awesome game. Like, he really stood up.
But at the front, Marler did what Marler does. Sinclair was awesome. There was one silly error where he decided he was a scrum half for 5 seconds and decided to tap and go, and it ended badly. But he was aggressive with ball in hand. He was aggressive. I mean, the scrum, as you'd expect against a team like this, the scrum was dominant, and Marler and Sinclair playing a big part in that, obviously. But I thought he had a great game, and definitely he would have put question marks in Warren Gatland's mind, and he gets another shot off the bench tomorrow. Yeah,
do you think he had? Because I actually think he's going to be just a phenomenon of a prop. I think he will change propping, but the way he plays that game, the way he's just so dynamic, so active, I'm just worried that Gatland will see it as too much of a risk. He's just not quite seasoned enough for a Lions test spot against the All Blacks.
Maybe not as a starter, but he may well think that that's exactly the sort of thing you want to bring on for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. No, good point.
So it may well be that he's playing for a spot in the 23 rather than in the 15. But he'd be pretty happy with that.
Mm. Oh yeah. I think he'd be ecstatic to take that.
So two England boys in the front row with Rory Best, who I thought, again, not a great game. This is one of the leaders. This is meant to be the first choice hooker. His lineouts were awful.
Yeah, he didn't cement his place, not at all.
Not at all. And I thought Jamie George, when he came on to replace him, there was a lift. He just looked more in control. Certainly the lineouts improved. So that's again great from an England point of view. I mean, it's not just us. Everyone says Jamie George is the best hooker in England. He just doesn't have the leadership abilities of Dylan Hartley, which is fair point.
Yeah.
But I think we all believe that Jamie George will be the hooker come 2019. And at the moment, it's about Dylan Hartley leading this side and developing the side and people like Jamie George so that they can take over from him when the time comes. So great for him. I thought he had a good game when he came on.
No, I agree. I think Jamie George did himself some favours. It'll be interesting to see Ken Owens tomorrow. We'll see. Is his injury 100% better? We'll see. I guess we'll find out fairly quickly. And he needs a big game, because I think at the moment Jamie George has got to be the front runner for that spot.
Well, you would think he's certainly in there. At the very least, I would think, like Kyle Sinclair, he's got to be looked at as the guy to bring on for the last 20, if not starting. But I think we kind of thought that beforehand anyway, didn't we? We sort of thought it was between Best and Owens for the start. But like you say, it'll be very interesting to see how Ken Owens handles it. He's obviously got the added pressure of the captain's armband. So whether that lifts him or holds him back will be interesting to see. But yeah, so far England boys looking to have done pretty well, whether it be starting or off the bench. You then had the row in Alan Wynne and Ian Henderson. I didn't think either of them really.
It was quiet, wasn't it?
Stood out. I thought when you consider the options in that we're going to see tomorrow and that we will see further down the line in Itoje and obviously Cruz coming off the bench, but Courtney Laws, who else is there? Was that all the five?
So there's Itoje, Laws, obviously Henderson, Alan Wynne, Cruz. Yeah, I think that's it. But Itoje Laws tomorrow will be interesting. They've got a real chance to step up.
I think 4 and 5 is wide open for sure.
My outside bet is Courtney Laws will be a test starter. That's my outside bet.
Gatland loves aggression, and that's one area that Courtney Laws never shies away from, isn't it?
He's not a pussy, is he?
And I think he's a big fan of Itoje as well. So It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow in that little battle. Cruz obviously not getting another shot off the bench, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. He'll have his chance to start, I'm sure, in the next one.
They've said that everyone will get a start in the first 3 games.
And rightly so, because you've got to see what people are doing and how they're performing. That's what it's all about. You're picking on form at this stage, because it's too important not to. But yeah, so then moving into the back row, Sam Warburton at captain. Again, I don't, he's not the kind of guy that has particularly bad games, and I don't think he had a particularly bad game. But he wasn't. It wasn't a particularly great game either. He didn't really stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Warburton is, despite what Gatlin feeds us, Warburton is starting. So, unless something tragic happens. I mean, Warburton, he did, by his standards, he didn't have a great game, but he was fine. But by his standards,
no, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that I think his position in the Test team is up for grabs. I think he's been selected as the captain because they can ink him in right now, and I think that will, short of either an injury or something going horribly wrong for him, I think that's done. But I didn't think he had the best of games at the weekend. However, Ross Moriarty I thought looked really solid, and Toby Faletau was awesome as well. And if you haven't seen it, there's a video on the website of Toby Faletau's try-saving tackle.
That's just brilliant.
Towards the end of the first half, and it was unbelievable.
It was brilliant. It's interesting because the loss of Billy was, I in my head I was still sort of thinking that's too big a loss, but Faletau wore the shirt. He really did.
He stepped up for sure.
Yeah, he was great, and it's, as we say, Billy, and obviously we did the episode on him with the and when we had the sort of the pod doc going on there. It's actually with the pod doc I thought, because there's going to be a few injuries coming, so I thought I'll go have a few beers with him, sort of get him on board, keep him happy. And I'm not sure the last time you went out with a doctor, but they tend to have their sort of idiosyncrasies, whereas some won't shake hands, which makes sense and things. Well, our pod doc has his own idiosyncrasy. His wallet never leaves his pocket. So it's an interesting one. He convinced me that there's sound medical reason behind it. I don't know what that is. But I think I actually had a...
Well, he's a doctor. You've got to take his word for it, haven't you?
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, like we were saying, obviously I'm sort of digressing there. But Faletau did step up, and now I struggle to see somebody else replacing him at 8 based on that performance.
I agree with you. I mean, CJ Stander is by no means a shy player. He will be presumably playing at 8 tomorrow.
Yeah, he will.
Given the rest of the back row line up for tomorrow, so he's the one who I think is the biggest threat to Faletau's chances. But I agree. I think Faletau definitely put down a hell of a marker, and I think Ross Moriarty did as well. I think he had a great game. He was aggressive with ball in hand. He was solid in defence. I mean, we know that defensively he doesn't have too many issues. I mean, he almost single-handedly caused England's upset in the Six Nations defensively. But in that game he was less aggressive going forwards. But in this one, he certainly wasn't shy. So that was good to see. So then moving on to the backs, I thought Greg Laidlaw had a really strong game at 9. I mean, he wasn't super exciting, but then Greg Laidlaw isn't. That's not the kind of player that he is. He was solid. He took his kicks. He kicked them well. He kind of ran the game a little bit, because I think Sexton failed to do that. And he did what Laidlaw does, and I thought he played well. I don't think he's necessarily played himself into the Test side. I think that particular position is probably already inked in, but he may well have played himself into contention to be the replacement.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he had a solid game. I think Webb and Murray would have to screw up pretty badly for Laidlaw to start.
Laidlaw's probably more of a midweek captain.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that he didn't let himself down. He did what he does, and he had a reasonable game, unlike his his fly half partner in Johnny Sexton, who I just thought, I know you've said, we talked about it briefly before, but I think like Hogg, I think he really let himself down. Whether he was trying too hard to shine, I think for him, it was poor.
Yeah, he didn't play to his standard. We like you say, we kind of covered that. He needs to, if he wants to start on the testing, which even if he'd had a great game, I'm still not starting him. But if he wants to start, he needs to absolutely boss it with the next match he plays, because at the moment, like we said, it's advantage Farrell. So look, hey, it is what it is. I think anyone to replace Farrell would have to have a hell of a game. And then, like, obviously the centre outside, I thought Tio was brilliant. I actually think he's really put a marker down. I think he's now been genuinely considered as a test starter, because it seems Gatland, it is going to be Warren ball by the looks of it. I don't think they're going to have a sort of Eddie Jones playmaker at 12. I think they will have a more of a runner at 12, almost definitely. And I think so. If we're saying who's the favourite, probably Henshaw, wasn't it?
Henshaw,
yeah, Henshaw.
I mean, Henshaw's playing tomorrow, so we'll see if there's any, because he has an opportunity now to put down his own marker.
Yeah,
and like you say, I mean, Henshaw's a big runner as well.
Yeah.
He's not a playmaker.
Yeah, it'll be good. And I mean, Jared Payne's obviously at 13. For me, JJ was a little bit quiet, and I think when you've got Davies, when he gets his game, he's got to still be the favourite for 13 at the moment.
Yeah, and as you say, Payne has a shot at putting down his mark. And JJ, it's one of the positions where, because he had a quiet game, he didn't do anything too badly, but he certainly didn't put down any kind of markers to say, yeah, this is my shirt for the test team. There will be more opportunities, of course, for these guys. I have no doubt. So, he'll get his chance again. But yeah, it just didn't really happen. But I suppose, you need your 10 firing, for to really bring your centres in and let them do their thing. Because if your 10's not firing, you can still flick the ball out to the wing and let your wingers try and do things, which Anthony Watson, for example, and not just Watson, Seymour as well, both had really good games, I thought. I mean, Watson in particular had a couple of really good chances, but sadly he was just let down by his teammates.
Yeah. Watson, I thought Watson was really good, and Watson, I've said all along, I have him as a test starter because he just has that ability to finish. He's absolute ridiculous lightning from a standing start. I think he's done himself some favours. People have to go out there and play better than he did if they want to move him off that spot. But Jack now, like, it's been awesome the last few weeks. Sort of for extra, Elliot Daly, a great player. So the wing is tough. That's going to be a tough, two for the test team to pick. But Watson certainly hasn't done himself any harm for being one of those two.
And like I said at the beginning, he's probably made himself available as a potential fullback as well.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, this is what I can do from the wing, but actually, you move me to the back, I can do it there as well." And so if and it's not just Jack Nowell or Elliot Daly. There are other guys also looking strong, but with a lot of competition on the wing, I don't think that Watson is only being looked at as a winger. I think, particularly given the way that Hogg played at the weekend, I think there's potential there, certainly to put pressure on him. But other great guys at the back coming through as well. So
yeah, I'm really worried about this fullback thing, because I'm worried if Halfpenny has a good game, Gatland's gonna just go with him, and I just don't think he's good enough at the moment. He's been a brilliant player. He's been an absolute legend of the game, but you can tell he's just that yard slower, that sort of just that fraction less impactful than he's been previously. But Gatland loves him, so it does worry me a bit. I'm hoping Hogg next time has an absolute stormer. Liam Williams, obviously, I mean, that guy, I think, like either wing or fullback, he is in and around the test team. He's one of the sort of most dangerous players. out there. So Liam Williams is going. So it'll be interesting to see, because obviously everyone gets to start. It'll be interesting to see where they start him next week. I suspect they'll start him at fullback. He's obviously benched tomorrow, covering.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see who he ends up covering for, because of course they may well bring him on at fullback, which would be a sign. I mean, I guess the thing is that Warren Gatland is the Wales coach, and he doesn't put him at fullback.
Yeah.
So we may find that actually he's not being looked at for fullback for that reason. We shall see what happens. Tomorrow may well be a sign of it, but certainly I would think, like you say, the week after when he gets his start, as I suspect he will. Whether he gets that on the wing or whether he gets it at fullback, that will be more telling, I would suggest.
Yeah, I agree. And the only other one, I'm sorry we skipped over this, is Bigger in contention for a test spot? I don't think he is.
Not a starter, but I think it. If you decide to have if you're playing Farrell at 10, then you are going to have a backup 10. So I would suggest that he's in contention for that to be that backup, based on Sexton's performance. I don't think you can write Sexton off yet. He's on the bench. He's on the bench tomorrow. He'll get another bite at the cherry, and I'm sure he will up his game. But I think it's too short a tour to get away with too many mistakes. So if he doesn't up his game kind of instantly, I think he may well write himself out.
Yeah.
In which case, Bigger gets a shout, and of course it is Bigger's coach in Warren Gatland who's making these decisions. So, he's certainly not in a bad position to be putting his hand up. So we just see what happens. Dan Bigger's one of those guys that can have an absolutely genius day one day and then just be terrible the next.
Yeah, he's like I say, I mean, actually against England he had a really good game in the Six Nations.
Yeah,
but
he's a gamble that sometimes pays off.
Yeah, he doesn't have the sort of I hate this saying, but the sort of X factor thing that some of the others do. But that's fine. You can still have a brilliant game without that. I can't see it, and I know, and like you alluded to just now, that the fact that Warren Gatland's their coach, and I know Gatland's been saying it's not to do with that. That's out the window. That will even subconsciously play a part.
Well, apart from anything else, it's the guys that he knows.
Yeah.
So it's all well and good saying, well, someone had a really good game 3 weeks ago, but I know Dan Bigger, and I've seen him have multiple good games. So if I've got to make a choice, a late decision on which way to go, do you go with the guy that was good 3 weeks ago, or do you go with the guy that has been good consistently in your eyes? We'll see what happens. Dan Bigger's an interesting one. A lot will depend on other decisions that get made. If Owen Farrell is the 10, part of me thinks, what does Johnny Sexton offer off the bench? If in fact you replace Farrell at all,
yeah.
You may not. Whereas maybe Dan Bigger's more of that kind of player that brings something different. So if things are looking a little flat, Dan Bigger perhaps introduces something different where maybe Sexton doesn't. I don't know. It's different. It's going to be an interesting one to watch as that kind of that story.
Yeah, that will be. I wonder whether Gatland will, in one of these matches, whether he will play a Sexton Farrell 10-12 or a Bigger Farrell 10-12, whether he'll even entertain that. I hope he does, because if he doesn't, for me, that's a bit naive, but that'll be interesting to see. But like you said, at the moment, it seems that Farrell is competing for that 10 spot and that 10 spot only.
Yeah, it's definitely looking that way. But like you say, it's early days, one game down. It will be interesting to see if he does go down that route. I mean, look, England have been doing it for 2 years, 3 years, however long it's been, and it's worked. 18 games, 17 games on the bounce. Clearly, Owen Farrell works at 12. So I think it would be naive not to at least try it out somewhere in one of the early games to see how that fits in with the rest of your game plan.
Yeah.
But I guess all that depends on whether or not he's already put him in the side at 10.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to just jump and sort of change something here slightly. Do you know who I'm really looking forward to see tomorrow? Haskell. I think he's been written off pretty much. Like, everyone's just written him off. He's a good player. I think he might go out there, have a stormer, and suddenly start having people think, hang on a minute, we need to maybe start rethinking back row, because the back row at the moment, you've got Warburton in there, you've probably got Faletau, and then you've got sort of Stander, possibly the first choice, but you've also got Amani. There's Tipperek. Haskell could still Moriarty. Shit, yeah. So it's a really tough one to pick, and everyone seems to have written Haskell off. But Haskell can have incredible games, like when we toured Australia.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Player of the tour, and rightly so. He was awesome.
Yeah, and if he's playing like that, you want him playing in the Test.
And I think Gatland knows that. Like I don't think Gatland has written him off. I don't think he'd have invited him on the tour otherwise.
Yeah.
I think, but it's definitely a massively competitive area, and but like you say, it's all to play for.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, as much as we're saying that Warburton is cemented at 7 or 6, wherever
7,
he is,
yeah.
I do think that if the other guys, and there are a lot of them, if they are that much better, I think he's going to struggle to justify keeping Warburton in. And that's not to say that Warburton isn't up there with them as well, because of course he is.
Yeah.
But I think that I don't think you need to be looking at it as there are only 2 back row positions up for grabs, and potentially only even only 1, because you've got Warburton and Faletau already in. Because I think the rest of the talent in the back row, there's too much of it.
They're awesome players, all of them.
Yeah. But James Haskell, his aggression, when he gets it right, like he did in Australia, worst case scenario, well, not worst case, but, coming off the bench for 20 minutes, he could make a huge impact.
Yeah.
So he may well be considered someone who would be really handy in that sort of position. I mean, it could potentially be a very England heavy 23.
And if it is, I don't think that's wrong. We haven't even mentioned bloody Sean O'Brien yet, who's obviously quality and will be starting next week. But yeah, it could, like you say, to go back to your point, yeah, it could be a strong sort of England presence within that. And that kind of makes sense. Hey, we're always going to say that, but actually it does kind of make sense. They've won the last 2 Six Nations, equaled world record for sort of games unbeaten. So you've got to look at a fairly England heavy team. And like you said, they all, none of them, I mean, we mentioned JJ didn't necessarily have his finest game, but none of them have done anything to ruin their chances, I don't think.
No, absolutely. I think the England boys have had a strong start to this Lions tour, and hopefully that will continue when the new guys come in. And we digressed slightly. We kind of got to the end of the first half. So just to kind of look at the second half, not that a lot changed in terms of the performances, because it was fairly similar. But when the changes did get made, the first thing that for me, and again, as you say, we're biased, but I was watching the game, same as everyone else, and I felt like the team lifted when Farrell came on. I felt like the team were in control in a way that they weren't before he was on the pitch. And that showed in the fact that they almost instantly scored a try, where that was very much him. He created the gap for Moriarty to go through, I think it was, and then he was back on the outside to then give the ball to Watson, who took it over the line. So, he did very well there. Yes, he missed one of his kicks. He was immediately very apologetic. He didn't miss the other 2.
Well, how did he miss that? How the fuck did he miss that? He's better than that. You're better than that, Owen.
Don't want to make excuses, but I did read that they use a different ball over there. So, maybe the balls they were using in practice weren't the same.
Cheating bloody Kiwis.
But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, because there's no other explanation for why the mighty Owen Farrell would have missed his kick.
Yeah, I can't see it.
But yeah, so he made a huge difference coming on. Jamie George, as we mentioned before, I think he made a huge difference coming on. He just seemed to control the lineouts better. George Cruz, there was nothing exceptional, but again, I don't think he did anything wrong. Likewise with Mako.
Yeah.
But they both I think performed well. The second half, after the finishes, as we call them, were on, was by far and away the best sort of 20, 25, 30 minutes of that match from a Lions perspective.
Yeah.
And I think you have to put that down to the guys that came on and what they brought to the team. Whether that's whether they were able to get more out of the players that were still on the pitch. And I'm not suggesting that 5-6 guys came on and single-handedly turned the game around, but you've got to get the balance of players right, haven't you? In these teams, and clearly there were elements of the guys coming off the bench that just brought more out of the rest.
Well,
of the
they were pretty much all Saris, weren't they? Yeah, it wasn't. They hadn't really gelled. It didn't really gel as a team. I mean, 13-7, let's not piss about. That's awful. That you should be beating them by 40 points.
Well, when you consider that the team you're playing doesn't have a single Super Rugby franchise player in it, they're professionals, but they're like tier 2. So, embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not that we're making excuses. I think you have no choice but to try and find the positives in what was otherwise a very disappointing game of rugby from a Lions perspective.
Yeah.
And for me, those positives are the England boys didn't embarrass themselves.
No, the England boys did really well. I think they did well. I hope they are all in their change room, in their team meetings saying that was a disgrace. I really hope that is happening. I'm sure it is behind closed doors. Obviously, they're not going to say that to media because that just doesn't help any of them. But I mean, I guess there's two ways to think about it, isn't it? Do you just ignore it and just say it is what it is, onwards and upwards, or do you look at that and say this is not good enough? We need to really address it.
Yeah, I think you say it's not good enough. I think this is the thing when you have a 40 plus man squad and ultimately only 23 of them get to play test match rugby, or only 23 of them get to play in the first test. You have to look at it and say this wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Are there areas where individuals are to blame, and if so, do something about it, because you potentially only get one chance. You don't get there are no lifelines. The tour's not long enough.
It's brutal.
But I think you 100% you have to say not good enough, and I think people like Owen Farrell will be saying that.
Yeah.
And not just him. We're obviously huge fans.
He's a demigod,
I'm sure, as a listener. But yeah, there'll be plenty of them saying it, and I'm sure they'll all be thinking it. And I think you absolutely have to, because you have to go into the next game with that view of that was a disgrace.
Yeah.
And we have to do so much more than simply perform in the next one. We have to kind of say we're really sorry for that, and this is what we're going to do to show our how sorry we are. So I'd be very disappointed if in to have a long 6 months' time, when the Living with the Lions video comes out, if we don't see a very disappointed group of players being very hard on themselves following that performance.
Yeah, I'd be a bit pissed off if they're not doing that, because you can't like I mean, I got quite a few texts after the game, and pretty much every single one of them said 3-0 New Zealand. And I'm like, based on that, fine. I get it.
But I think that's the thing. If that's the team that played New Zealand, and that's the big thing that people have to remember, is that isn't the team that's going to play New Zealand.
No, I mean, realistically, you've got, if we're saying who would be the starter from that team, I'm thinking Faletau and Hogg, maybe.
Oh, see, no, not for me. Hogg's out. Based on that team and that game, I think the ones, for me, Rory Best didn't do enough. Wyn Jones didn't do enough. Henderson didn't do enough. Warburton, well, we'll leave that one for now. Laidlaw was good, but he didn't do enough. Sexton didn't do enough. Seymour, I'm just not sure that there isn't better options, but we'll see.
He's a great player,
Joseph
but there are better players. Yeah.
Probably didn't do enough. Hogg definitely didn't do enough.
Yeah.
And off the bench, Mako, we'll see.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything to his chances either way, Mako, I don't think.
Yeah. I think most of the bench was like that, other than obviously Farrell saying this is my spot and Jamie George saying keep an eye on me as well. I think the bench generally were all reasonable. But yeah, so I think it's massively open. I don't think anyone really, apart from Farrell and possibly Faletau, have said, I'm in. That's my test number.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Yeah,
There's a long way to go. I think really you have to get through the first 3 games, don't you? You've got to give everyone their chance. Kind of go right. Let's see what's happened in the first 3 games. Let's see who are the outstanding players, and hopefully it's a nice mix that gives you a 15 rather than the same 4 or 5 positions in each game, which leaves you with a huge number of difficult decisions to make.
I think you've hit it. I think you've got it absolutely right there. You can't. It's one game, and we are massively second guessing. We need to see the first three games. Obviously Wednesday, which we're watching at yours actually, aren't we, in the morning?
Lions against the Blues at Eden Park.
From Casa de Atkinberry, and I swear to God, I'm hoping you've got some bacon in for the bacon rolls.
Yeah, it's at the shop, mate. You just you pass. I think you passed it on the way from the station.
I'm going to drive sod the station, but it's fine. I'll pick up the bacon.
I'll provide the gas to cook the bacon.
Oh, we're barbecuing it. Nice.
Oh, we could do. Yeah, so that's Wednesday. The team to face the Blues. So the changes. There's been 15 changes in this one. So up front, you got Jack McGrath, Ken Owens, as we mentioned, who's going to be the captain, and Dan Cole. So that's the first of our England boys.
Holy, come on.
First shout. Obviously, the row is Big Marrow and Courtney Laws. So that'll be an interesting one to see because I think both of them really good shout for Test starts.
Yeah.
In the back, Tipperick gets his first start. He obviously came off the bench on Saturday, but he gets his first start alongside Haskell and CJ Stander at 8. So it'll be interesting to see if Stander does put his hand up.
Stander, so we're writing in Falatown now saying he's a Test starter. Stander is awesome. We were like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stander's not an 8, ideally though, is he?
No,
so
he's ideally a 6.
He could have a great game and still not be putting Falatau under pressure.
Yeah,
because it maybe he has a great game and they say we want him at 6.
Yeah.
So that will be an interesting one just to see, But it's three strong back row players there, and we'll see what they can do. Yeah. Reece Webb at 9 with Dan Bigger. So it'll be interesting to see how Bigger gets on. And obviously, it doesn't hurt that he's got his Wales teammate in Reece Webb inside him there.
And that's good for Webb as well, because Conor Murray is in most people's mind the starting 9. Webb needs to really play well, and it must be helpful having your sort of Wales teammate at 10. Reece Webb's a good player, but he needs to shine. I think he might be.
I think he's the backup. I think at
the moment he is, yeah. But I've just got a sneaky suspicion Reece Webb's going to have a couple of cracking games, and that one could be.
Trouble with Reece Webb is he's a finisher in a game like this, because I just don't think he's got 80 minutes of a kind of sensible head.
Yeah.
And you just can't afford to give away silly penalties against the best team in the world.
Conor Murray bosses it a lot better in my mind.
I think that's why Conor Murray has to start, and Reece Webb can come on and have 20 minutes where he tries things and maybe turns the game around. I think that's going to be. I think that's what will happen, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Then you get Elliot Daly and Jack Noel, the 2 wings, 2 more England boys.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Both of them on really good form at the moment, so that will be an interesting one to see. And then Henshaw and Payne in the middle. Again, I think Payne possibly is not one that's too much of a threat, but any one of these guys is good enough to change that. But Henshaw is obviously one to really closely watch, because it's really him versus Teo / versus Farrell, depending on
assuming
Gatling goes. So.
Warren Boy, it's Henshaw versus Teo, and Teo's really set the marker, like saying, right, this is the standard I'm playing to.
Yeah, absolutely. But Henshaw, no question, he's got the ability to step up. And I think as well, the Provincial Barbarians, credit to them for what they achieved against the Lions, but they're not a strong side. So,
no, they're really not.
This is a much bigger test, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Lee Halfpenny at the back. How could we forget him? And then the replacements were Rory Best gets another shot. Marler and Sinclair both get second shots. Ian Henderson gets another shot. Greg Laidlaw Johnny Sexton get another shot. And the new boys coming off the bench, Peter Amani and Liam Williams.
So Amani and Williams are 2 really good players on really good form. Amani, for me, has not been talked about seriously enough as a potential Test starter. The guy's an absolute dog. He's hard as nails. He'll scrap for everything. And he will start next match, obviously, because they say it. So he, in the back, that back row is so competitive. But Amani's got to be considered. I mean, the guy is awesome.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like we've said, there's so many. He's taken so many back row, world class back row players with him.
Yeah.
And that's with Billy missing.
And Heaslip missing as well.
It's going to be tough, but these guys have got their chance, so we will see what they can do. Unfortunately, I think it's because it's so many changes. I think it will be another game where, as much as we'd like to see them gel as a team, there will be people trying to play as individuals to make statements. I just hope that from an England point of view, Eddie has got into the mindset of the England players that you do not play for yourself, you play for your team, and that's definitely something he's been doing over the years. Over the sort of 18 months or so that he's been in charge. So that may well be one of the reasons why our guys have kind of outperformed some of their counterparts from Wales, Ireland, and Scotland.
Yeah, and absolutely. The mentality of England players is in a good place, and that counts. That definitely counts for a lot. They know how to win. Whereas Wales, with all due respect to them, they don't know how to beat New Zealand.
Don't know how to win.
Yeah, they don't know how to win. They don't know how to. No, but they don't know how to beat New Zealand because they haven't done it.
Yeah.
Like none of these stuff.
But they need to focus on the game in front of them. This is the Blues.
Yeah, sure.
It's not New Zealand. As hard as it will be, they need to not be thinking about tests. They need to be thinking about this game and how do they win this game well.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the scoreline has to be huge, but the performances have to be huge.
That was quite poetic there, Rackers.
Thanks. Thank you. If the performances are big, then the scoreline will follow.
Yeah.
And that's all they can do. That's what they need to do. And as we said, I think 3 games in, we'll be in a position to make a much more educated kind of guess at what we think we're going to see in the tests, obviously. And so that will be an interesting episode when we get to that stage. That will be Saturday. We'll cover that briefly on Saturday the 10th, isn't it?
Yeah.
That'll be game 3. That'll be game 3, but also England-Argentina game 1.
Yes. Yeah.
Big episode.
That's that'll be a big episode. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be covering that Lions game in the kind of the pre-game build-up for the England test that evening. And then, of course, we'll cover the England game half-time and full-time. And we'll get that put out for you guys on Saturday evening. So whether you get back from the pub and want to listen to it, or you want it on Sunday morning when you're lying in bed, which sounds dreamy, it'll be there waiting for you. So enjoy.
Yeah. And actually, that's it, guys. Like we've really sort of had good sort of numbers of downloads recently. We really appreciate it. Please feel free to get in touch with anything. Like we want this to be interactive. Like if you think we're pricks, let us know. If you think there's other stuff you'd want to see us do, please let us know. We want you guys involved in this as much as possible.
Absolutely, and we keep saying it, but we're going to continue to keep saying it. The most important thing that you can do for us, other than get in touch and ask us questions and things, is to rate and review us on iTunes. I know that it can be a bit complicated because for some reason iTunes like to make it as difficult as possible. But if you can take the 2 minutes to kind of navigate your way through the iTunes setup, find our page, hit the reviews section and drop us a review and a rating, it'll be massively valuable to us, because the more of those we get, the more chance we have to get into their new and noteworthy section, which is how we then get put out there and found by all the other England fans and hopefully Lions fans as well, who want to listen to what we have to say. Massive thanks for your continued support. As always, you can find the blog posts about the episodes and other things that are going on, and various videos and things that we've posted on our various social media profiles, which is at England Rugby Pod, and the website www.englandrugbypod.com.
So did you do one too many W's there?
No, just 3.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, cool. Yeah, guys. I think that's probably. Is there anything else that we need to cover, do you think?
No, I think we've probably done it all. I think we've probably kept them long enough. So on that note, guys, we will hopefully not see you, but you'll hear from us at least in a few days' time, Saturday, the 10th.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll be back soon.
Take care.